Spoiler alert for the following programs. How many stories have you heard of or watched where the big thing is saving the world? Try to count. Right now. Okay, now stop, because if you kept going, we'd be here all day. Saving the world is very common in various types of media, and at a certain point, you kind of start to wonder why. It even gets annoying sometimes. Like, come on, do something different. How is the whole world in danger every time? Well, surprisingly, it isn't just our modern-day media. There are actually a lot of stories, especially those from ancient mythologies, that involve the whole world being in danger. In almost every major religion and mythology, there is some story about how the world began, and one or even multiple about how the world will end. The Aztecs believed they were living in the fifth world, with the previous four having been destroyed by various cataclysmic events, including but not limited to a giant flood, and one that has to do with raining jaguars. I'll let you look into that at your own accord. Ragnarok is another famous example, and no, I'm not talking about the Thor movie. MCU is not an accurate depiction of Norse mythology. I need everyone to know this. Anyway, my point being, even our faraway ancestors thought about what would happen if the whole world was in danger. Despite the doomsday implications, you'll see a lot of saving the world stories in children's media, and there's a reason for that. When you think about it, it's actually very vague. Doesn't go into gory details or describe anything too traumatic. Normally it's just, the guy with the red eyes, dark robe, and horns is going to destroy the world, and we have to save the world! Which they do before anything too icky happens. Part of what makes saving the whole freaking world so vague is because the human brain, especially a child's brain, can't really comprehend the scale of the whole world. You can look at a picture of the Earth from a satellite or something, but it still often feels unreal to think that we're somewhere in that picture, albeit far, far away. If you think too much about just how many people are on our planet, or just how small we are compared to the whole world, you might start to have an existential crisis. It's a trip, let me tell you. And that brings me to potential issues. One of the major issues with this trope is the fact that people can often feel disconnected from it for the same reasons I just described. The world has gotten so big that when we think about the whole world, we don't think about every little detail. We can't process that much, and even if we tried, it would take absolutely forever. It almost feels like an outside entity that we're describing. We can start to feel the fourth wall in front of us. Secondly, our suspension of disbelief only goes so far. The stakes don't always feel very high when the problem is the whole world or the whole universe, because those concepts in and of themselves are so large. You'd think the stakes would be pretty high, the bigger the better and all that, but in reality this can cause your audience to feel disconnected and actually lower the stakes. Your audience knows the characters will likely succeed because your entire universe is at stake. Not a single island or a certain city, it's everything. Unless the plot is about the consequences of them failing, they may not buy the stakes, since ending the world means ending the story, and that is an unresolved plot. If you really want your audience to believe that there is a possibility for failure, you'll want to narrow your danger zone, as I like to call it. Give a more specific danger variable, like this community, or this city, or this planet the characters are specifically not currently on, but we are attached to for whatever reason. If the cast has somewhere else they could potentially go, then there is a real possibility whatever's in danger could actually be lost, because losing it doesn't automatically end the story or kill the cast. Lastly, because of the scale of things and the vagueness of the world, we can often forget that everything we care about is in the world. When we all hear the world and not my home or my family, we can get a little detached. What makes us want to keep something or save someone is our attachment to it, and that is key in just about every aspect of this trope. One strategy I've seen to remedy this is showing characters we've met and likely care about watching as the heroes fight to save the world, maybe even facing some of the consequences if the world is in the middle of ending. Spoiler warning! In Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, they did exactly this, showing every character we've ever met through the series literally getting the life sucked out of them during the final battle. Now obviously they counteract the whole thing within a few minutes, but those are some scary minutes. The reason is because we're no longer just concerned about the world in general. We're worried about the characters, the ones we're invested in, and the ones who, if they were ever permanently harmed, we would all riot. Try to think about it this way. Would you care if a random building got destroyed? Probably not. You didn't know anything about it other than building is gone now. And maybe, crap, somebody has to pay for that now. Tax dollars, people. But if there were people in that building, you'd be sadder. Maybe not super sad since you didn't know them, but it's still upsetting. Now imagine if everyone and everything you cared about was in there. Stakes get a lot higher, don't they? Getting your audience to consider what is in the world makes the threat of ending the world a lot more high stakes. This also involves making the world ending seem more believable. Maybe one character is leaning towards heroic sacrifice territory, or everyone's arcs are about wrapped up and the only thing left is the final battle, which involves the possibility of our main cast dying along with some or all of the characters. There's also that how wide is your danger zone question I mentioned earlier. That all slips a little bit into character deaths, but I'll discuss that in another episode. Now you may notice a lot of these issues have to do with stakes. Normally you'll see stakes gradually increase through a series as the characters near their ultimate goal or the villain's true plans are revealed. Cue evil laugh. This normally involves taking over the world or something, which honestly I don't really get. Can you imagine all of the paperwork involved in that? But that's not my point. Increasing the scale from our favorite characters to the entire human or otherwise population does not automatically increase the stakes. In fact, it can actually do the opposite. High stakes primarily come from audience investment. Like I said, attachment is key in this trope. If the whole universe is at stake, but your audience has only experienced a growth attached to one planet, even one country, then why would the stakes be higher? We don't know anything about the rest of the universe. Out of sight, out of mind. Unless the audience is attached, the stakes will stay the same, and maybe even drop. It can also be confusing when we only see one place and suddenly everyone's freaking out because the whole universe is in danger. Like, where did that even come from? What's out there? We've never seen it. And this goes beyond cultures and societies shown through the characters' adventures. Something to remember whenever you want to create stakes: your world is more important to us than the world. When the things or people we care about are in trouble, we're worried. When a more general concept is in trouble, we care less, if at all. It just feels disconnected. We don't experience the stakes in the same way. If the whole cast is terrible people always being terrible to each other, why should we care if they're gonna die, or if their world is going to be destroyed, or if one betrays the other? Unless one is an actual cinnamon roll or just deserves a freaking break from all the crap that's been going on, why would we care? Why would they even care? If not even your characters would care about an event, why would your audience? Besides the trope itself, I also want to acknowledge another aspect of these types of stories. Why is the world in danger in the first place? Is a villain trying to take over and become king of everything? Is the villain trying to end everything? Is it some outside force beyond human control? Is it an alien invasion? Why your world needs saving contributes as much to character, plot, and stakes as how big and bad the big bad really is. If the main villain is a tyrant trying to take over the world, and maybe even partially succeeding, your main cast will probably be some form of rebel group. It's probably going to be a more warlike setting, with some fantastical or sci-fi elements, whichever your preference. You don't see a lot of these specific plots in a real-world setting. Think Star Wars, She-Ra, even Transformers, although they aren't technically rebels. If it's some kind of outside force, like disease, asteroids, or solar flares, your main cast is probably a group of scientists or military operatives trying to stop it. People with the kind of resources and knowledge to do something about it. Maybe superheroes if you're feeling capes and cowls that day. Maybe they're even just a group of survivors, like any zombie apocalypse media. Although survivors does imply they survived something, so that drifts more into post-apocalypse territory, which obviously means the world was not saved. Boo. There can be non-traditional roles in any of these stories, and these are not the only types of characters who can exist in these types of stories, but generally these are the types of casts and settings that fit. When it comes to saving the world in a story with an outside threat or multiple antagonists, there is the possibility of having another antagonist want to help the main cast in their mission to save the city, world, universe, whatever. Maybe it's not a full-blown redemption arc, but they've come to the reasonable conclusion that if everything ends, what's left for them to do? All they can cackle at is the void. Even when it's another antagonist, this trope can still apply, especially with more power-hungry, egotistical villains like Megatron and Lex Luthor. Sort of an enemy of my enemy situation. Sometimes they turn into redemption arcs, but not always. They don't always have to. In storylines where this happens, the antagonist often has something the heroes are lacking. The final ingredient for the cure, a powerful enough energy source to power the asteroid-destroying laser, the one weakness of the cackling warlord. Even something as simple as another approach the heroes haven't tried yet, albeit, in all likelihood, a more devious one? But hey, maybe they just know a guy. Whatever the case, you do have to make sure it is not only believable, but that it makes sense in the context of past actions and current circumstances. More spoiler warnings. In Transformers Prime, Megatron originally wants to help Unicron, but when he is dismissed by the ancient Cybertronian, he turns on him, instead choosing to help Team Prime by telling them how he can be defeated and assisting them in finding Unicron's spark, which is the equivalent of a soul for those who don't know. But this is all for his own gain, which he himself even admits to, claiming he wants the Earth as his personal playground. Not to mention the whole I'm the only one allowed to defeat you thing he has for Optimus. He also tries to kill Optimus right after he does the Unicron killing trick, so that just goes to show you what kind of a guy he is. Meanwhile, throughout the DC animated universe, Lex Luthor has multiple encounters with Superman and the rest of the Justice League. Positive, negative, neutral, negative, etc. Later in the series, they're strictly antagonistic encounters, but in the series finale of Justice League Unlimited, he does something very interesting. In short, he accidentally resurrects Darkseid and blames him for no longer being able to find and connect with Brainiac. That's a long story, watch the series. He manages to get himself and a bunch of other supervillains he's previously teamed up with back to Earth and walks into the Justice League Metro Tower, explaining the situation and telling them they're going to help him get revenge. And save Earth in the progress because they are superheroes, like, let's be real here. Blah blah blah, they save the world. Luthor does a 100% selfishly motivated self-sacrifice dealio, and because Batman is hilarious, he gives the other villains a head start before they start rounding them up. Because, they did just help save the world. But I actually want to focus on these other villains for a minute. Some of the supervillains are only interested in surviving and seizing the opportunity to escape, but others express actual concern for the fate of the planet. I like the confrontation between the League and the remaining villains because it really does show two different approaches to how an antagonist may react in the face of the world possibly ending. Some don't care, some are focused on self-preservation, some are focused on furthering their own goals, and some genuinely care about something. Whatever it is up to you. And now, as we finish off that very long explanation, in short, here's what I blabbed about today. Saving the world is commonly used, but is not necessarily unusable in your story. It can be pretty vague and disconnected, and suspension of disbelief only goes so far. Audience investment or attachment are at the core of making it enjoyable. Don't discount the power of your world versus the world. Limit your danger zone in order to keep audience investment and raise the stakes. Consider why your world is in danger and needing to be saved, and factor that into character, plot, and world building. Antagonists can have places in saving the world plots besides being the one putting the world in danger, and it can go in a lot of directions, from pure evil motivations to full-blown redemption arcs. And that's it. Thanks for listening, people. I'll see you next time.